What I'm going to be talking about is transitions back and forth between industry and academia. And just to kind of let you know, most of you probably don't know, I came through the academic ranks as well, and through a postdoc, and I had a soft money faculty position for a little while. And then I had a friend call me up from Abbott Labs who was looking to hire some people that knew how to do physiology. And so I went and worked for Abbott for nearly 7 years, and then I made the transition to the Medical College of Georgia, and it's been now 12 years, which is kind of hard for me to believe. But I just wanted to kind of give you that sort of background of where I'm coming from. Divided my talk basically into two different pieces. I'm going to try to fly through little bits of it, and some of it I think is very much related to what Dr. Walters has already said, things related to preparing your CV and interviewing and things like that. So I won't spend too much time on those things. But first, I thought it would be useful just to kind of highlight some of the differences as I see it between academia and working in the pharmaceutical industry. And for the most part, what I'm going to be talking about is relative to mainly pharmaceutical industry, but other areas as well. And there are some differences between biotech and big pharma, but I'm not going to really, we're not going to go into that. Those have actually been covered in other career symposia. And then finally, the other half I want to talk about is how to position yourself for a transition, and this is very much related to what Dr. Walters has already told you, a lot of really helpful information for that in a more general sense. I'm going to try to be a little more specific about the move from between industry and academia. Independence. That's the first big thing that comes to everyone's mind. Academic freedom. Well, there's some truth to that. I mean, I love the fact that there's academic freedom, and I don't have time to go into my personal story, but this is one of the big reasons why I moved back to academia. It's not because you can't have a great job and a great career in industry. It has nothing to do with that. It's a personal choice. However, you got to do what can get funded. If you have I know a lot of faculty who just insist on pursuing an idea that they have and something related to what they did as a student and a postdoc, and they just don't want to give it up. But it's not fundable. So you don't really have that kind of freedom. In industry, you don't have a lot in the research plan. You have to get used to the idea that this is a real job. There are bosses that you have to report to, and for most people in industry, there's lots of bosses. Your boss has a boss, and he has a boss, and so forth. The budget is very large, but it's very competitive. Within a big pharmaceutical company like Abbott, we had 23 drug discovery projects, and each project had 20 to 25 people working on it. That costs a lot of money to run that operation. And so, the idea that you've just got unlimited money is a myth. You actually compete a lot within the company for resources. One of the big things that this can be an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on your personal feelings about it, is you may have to work outside your area of expertise. And this is really why I decided to leave industry, or leave Abbott, because I'm a renal cardiovascular person, and they had decided, the company made a corporate decision, we're not going to pursue any more cardiovascular targets, any more renal targets. And so my options within the company was basically safety pharmacology, and that's not what I was interested in doing. So, but on the other hand, a lot of people love the fact that you get bored with a topic, you just go do something else, and it's great. There's a lot of people in industry that just love that kind of thing. And so you have to really do a lot of introspection. And this whole thing, you have to look at yourself and decide, what is it do I really like? What motivates me? Salary. Okay, in academia, it's a comfortable salary. Of course, if I was doing the exact same job with an MD behind my name, I would make about 3 times more money, at least. Depending, okay, only 2. Yeah, it depends, and the institution and what level you're at. But nonetheless, academic jobs pay fairly well. And it all depends on where you are and how long you've been there. This is a misconception. When you're starting out right out of your PhD, there's not a huge difference. Primarily because when I went to work at Abbott, Abbott's on the North Shore of Chicago. If anybody knows anything about Chicago, that's a very expensive place to live. A lot of the companies are in the greater Philadelphia area, large urban areas. Cost of living is much higher in those areas. I took a $23,000 pay cut to move to Georgia, but my standard of living didn't change at all. So, I think the point there is that I sure hope that's not a motivation for anybody for wanting to go into industry, because you'll be disappointed, I think. There's a tremendous potential for growth, though. If you get into a company and you get a real feeling for what's expected of you, and if it fits you just right, then there's tremendous potential for huge salary growth. So that's where the big difference really is. If you are a really unique talent, you can actually get a signing bonus. I know we hired some combinatorial chemists. This was 15 years ago. Combinatorial chemists right out of their PhD, no postdoc at all. They were making $80,000, and that was 15 years ago. And some of them, they got $20,000 bonuses and things like that. So if you have unique skills, but that's more the exception than the rule usually. Other benefits. One of the things I love about being at MCG is I'm at a teaching hospital. I can call up any one of my colleagues and say, my knee's hurting, can you take a look at it? And, usually they'll look at it without a problem, without charging you sometimes even. The teacher's retirement program is outperforming the stock market. It's really nice. This is actually much better than what I had at Abbott. I had 100% of my retirement money was in Abbott stock. They've changed that now, but today that's a very risky thing. That's why they changed it. Certainly in academia, you have a lot of flexibility with your time. You have more vacation time, although we don't take it. And that's the difference. In industry, you take your vacation. It's weird. But now, as far as the retirement benefits, not a huge difference, although a lot of companies, including Abbott, had cut back a lot. And in an industry, for the most part, you have to be there by 8 o'clock in the morning, most companies. Again, small biotechs are different, but you have to be there at 8, and 95% of the people leave when the clock strikes 5. At least that's big pharma. And generally, depending on, some people do some work at home, some people don't. It sort of depends on how aggressive you are and how you want to, how bad you want to move up that ladder will determine how much extra time you put on nights and weekends. In academia, I don't think you can survive if you're not working nights and weekends. It's tough. Stress. Now, job stress is very different. That was one of the first things that early on, after the first year or two after I got back to academia, that really struck me is how the job stress was different. funding is a very stressful thing. You know, whether or not you've got a grant, whether you're going to get your grant renewed. But once you get grants, then that kind of relieves some stress, but only for a very short time, because then as soon as you get a grant, you need to start thinking about getting it, you know, doing what it takes to get it renewed. And a lot of the stress is self-imposed. A lot of my fellow colleagues are happy just sort of scraping along, you know, trying to keep one little grant going. And then other people, you know, they're just obsessed. Got to get more grants, got to get more grants. And they keep working. And you know, that's self-imposed. You know, some faculty want to build big labs, and some are okay with smaller ones. And so a lot of it's, you know, again, it's really related to the academic freedom idea. The stress within corporations, you know, certainly the possibility of a restructuring or a buyout, or that's definitely there. It's although for me personally, I wasn't that worried about it, because I had enough confidence in my abilities that, you know, I have a PhD in biomedical sciences area and physiology, and I knew that I could go out and get a job if I got laid off. You know, so that is definitely a stressful kind of thing. But if you notice that the stress down here is not stress that you impose on yourself. One of the things I like about the stress in academia is if I fail, I don't have anybody to blame but myself. I know a lot of people want to blame the reviewers, they want to blame NIH, or they want to blame somebody, but you know, you're fooling yourself if you blame others for your inability to get the grant. You have to figure out what it takes, and a lot of people do that, and so there's no reason why you can't do that too. All right. The political situation is very different in the two places. In academia, it's highly variable. I mean, it just really depends on, you know, who you're working for and who's your dean and that sort of thing. And it can really vary from one institution, from one department to the next. The personality of the department chair can have a lot of influence there. Now, certainly funding makes things a lot easier for you. You know, the dean loves you when you get that second or third grant. You know, you're the man. There are politics in the peer review system. You know, I've sat on study sections, and I've heard people say things, you know, in so many words. I just don't think this person's any good. You know, that's not a valid criticism. And that happens sometimes. The politics in big pharma is pervasive every day. One of the things about, at least in a big pharmaceutical company like Abbott, is that your advancement is basically all about a bigger salary. You know, that's the carrot out there for everybody all the time. Sure, the idea of participating in developing a drug is a fantastic idea, and it's really rewarding when it happens, but it rarely happens. Abbott had 23 drug discovery projects. They launch a novel chemical entity from one of their project teams once every 10 years. That was out of 23 projects. So your chances of actually getting there with the drug that you're working on are pretty slim. And so what happens a lot of times is you have people who are what I call gunners, who are always spending all their time in the department manager's office or the group leader's office, you know, working the system, talking to people, getting to know them, buttering them up. There's an expression that I won't use that you all know. And there's a lot of those, you know, a fair number of those type of people, and sometimes they get promoted because there are some managers who like to be told how bright they are and that kind of thing. And so, you know, and there's others who who see through it. So I don't want to try to paint this horrid picture, but that's just the way people are, and you need to be aware that's potentially an environment you might find yourself in. Now, opportunities for advancement within a traditional academic structure, somewhat limited opportunities, and I won't really go through those. In industry, this is a big plus. There's a lot more options for you in the pharmaceutical industry. A lot of branches you can go off to. You may be a bench scientist, and then you might find out, well, I have a good friend who actually trained in the same lab I did back in Cincinnati. He's now working as a medical liaison officer. He loves to travel. He likes to meet people, so he's traveling all around advising scientists and physicians about the science behind their drugs. He's not a salesperson. And so, it's really rewarding. There's writing. Abbott has tons of people that write all that literature that they hand out to everybody. Somebody's got to write it, somebody with technical experience and expertise. So there's lots of opportunities. So that's definitely a plus. Teamwork's a big one. I know, this is one that my wife really missed. When we moved to Georgia, you're on your own, you and your technician, and building your lab. And, although, one of the things we like about being where we are is we do have a large team of people that work in the area that we're in, and so that's really, if we didn't have that, I wouldn't stay there. So we both really like the teamwork environment. Just because you're structured in the same department doesn't mean you're going to be working together. But this is a big advantage about working in industry. Every Monday morning, we met with 20 people on our project team, and we had chemists, biochemists, in vivo people. We had, and as the project went along, we started bringing in some marketing advisors and things like that. I mean, it's a fun thing to deal with. And you have, when you're working on a project, you have every technique available to you. And it's so neat that to be able to do that. It's related to the laboratory environment. It's variable depending on how much grant money you have and how big your lab is. But the labs in academia sometimes can be kind of old. Sometimes they're new, but sometimes old. Core facilities can vary, so depending on the institution. In industry, and I'll highlight the state-of-the-art equipment. New technology always comes to industry first. Over 15 years ago, there were people at Abbott doing microarrays and things like that. So if you're really into the technology part of it, industry is a great place to be. You have to have communication skills no matter where you are. And a lot of people say, I want to go to industry because I don't want to have to write grants. Well, you're going to have to write reports. You're going to have to write proposals. You're going to have to write. There's definitely, you got to be able to communicate. And it's not just written. If you're on a project team in industry, every Monday I have to stand up and give a little report. I got to present my data. I got to tell them what I've been doing. So communication skills are critical as scientists, because if you cannot communicate, you didn't do it. Okay? And that's what I tell students all the time. Especially students who are not native English speakers, I tell them you must learn how to speak in English. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to succeed. Other positives about academia, I don't have a lot of detail here, but the thing I love is being with the students and fellows. I mean, that's one thing I clearly missed when I was at Abbott. Other people, they're okay. That's not what they're into. So it's really, again, I keep coming back to this idea. You have to know what you like and what you don't like. In industry, there's a lot more money being spent on research in industry. I don't know how accurate this is, but I was told not only are 80% of the research dollars that are spent on research, or 80% of the research dollars in industry are spent on advancing knowledge, new information, and 20% is improving existing medicine. Actually, this is not, I don't think that's accurate anymore. It's actually, unfortunately, swaying way over the other direction in the last 5-10 years. But another statistic that I've read says that of the PhDs in the life sciences, 80 to 90% will be outside of academia. That's where the jobs are, 80 to 90% of the jobs. So you can't just discount that as an option. And I know the tech transfer people at all the schools probably will cringe when I see this. Virtually all new drug discoveries come from private industry. There might be a few, small handful that have come from universities, but that's not to say universities didn't contribute to them. But at some point, you got to have a company to help get you through. I'm not going to go through all this because this is, I've really kind of touched on these things, but this relates to, asking yourself what you're good at and what you're not, and figuring out what you like and what you don't like. There's a lot of common misconceptions about the other side, as I would say, so no matter which side you're on. And the one down here was, the last two here I'll point out, these things were said about me in about the same time. That I publish a lot because I'm in industry, and, he's not able to publish much because he's in industry. And this really is kind of a segue into the second part of my talk. I mean, I think regardless of where you're going, you've got to have an inherent curiosity. And if you don't have that inherent curiosity, quest for knowledge, you're not going to be able to succeed. But these are things that when you're positioning early, and these slides are more for earlier in your career, but they can apply to mid-career transition as well. So you have to have a strong CV. You have to have publications. You have to have fellowships or grants or some types of awards during your training phase. If you're in academia and you're trying to move to industry, and they look at your CV and they say, gee, he's had this faculty position for 5 years, he has 3 publications. That's not very impressive. He hasn't had a grant. Because industry is looking for people that are going to succeed. And if they look at your academic record and say, they didn't really succeed in academia, why do we think they're going to succeed with us? And so you really need to be working on these things. Participation at national meetings and networking is really, really critical. And Dr. Walters talked about this sort of thing, about not burning bridges, small world. I can't. We all have so many small world stories. It's just incredible. Even if you're in industry and you're thinking about moving back to academia, you've still got to have that strong CV. People still need to know you, and I think that was key to my movement back to academia, was that I kept coming to the meetings, I kept presenting at the meetings, I kept publishing. It wasn't always easy. What it meant, I had to write papers in the evenings or weekends or whatever, because the company didn't really care that much whether I published or not, but I cared. And so you have to continually position yourself for that. Again, you have to communicate so people know you're looking. Again, recommendation is extremely important. The strong letter. Also, a research plan and teaching philosophy is typically needed. When you go to give a seminar, you need to tell a story. You don't need to impress anybody with the volume of cool data you got. Tell them a story about how things work, okay? And know who you're talking to. You don't want to, depending on which way you're going, if you're going into industry, you don't want to give them the little details of what little physiological mechanism you've you've been studying. You want to kind of give them the bigger picture. You need to let people know that you want the job, whether you want the job or not. Okay? you need to walk away from the interview having them think, geez, that's the greatest person we've ever interviewed. We've got to hire them. And then it's up to you to decide. Now, on the other hand, the people interviewing you are thinking the same thing. We want them to just be begging for this job. Okay, so it goes both ways. And so it's better off to decline a job offer than to not get one at all. All right? Okay. Again, do homework. Dr. Walters again mentioned about knowing who you're dealing with. And if you do get an interview, you must follow that up with a letter thanking them, expressing your interest. If you've decided there's just no way in the world I'm ever going to work for them, regardless, let them know. But if you're not sure, don't cut it off until you're absolutely certain. To get a job in industry, you've got to be able to show that you're a team player. The breadth of skills is important. There is a big demand for people who do physiological research, pharmacology, big demand. And no matter what, you have to have postdoc experience. It really makes a difference where you did your postdoc. Even if you're going into industry, your pedigree is important. So choose those things wisely. You have to have a sense of applied science. You have to be able to, cut your losses when it's not working. And you can't be an introvert or a loner. If you're not a good public speaker, that doesn't mean industry is good for you. You have to have communication skills. Moving from industry back to academia is really kind of the bottom line here. That you have to publish, stay active, maintain. A lot of people can get. I had an academic appointment when I was working at Abbott. I went and taught pharmacology at the University of Illinois. A couple of lectures, I filled a little gap for them. But the biggest problem is you don't have any grant funding record. And so what this means is you may have to take a step down. You may not enter academia at the level that you think maybe you deserve. And that can be a problem, ego problem sometimes. I know I was 40-something year old, and I'm starting out as a new assistant professor without tenure. But I survived. The bottom line is you have to ask yourself what you want to do with your career. Be honest with yourself about your career, interests, goals, and abilities. Really know why are you a scientist? What do you like out of it? What are you trying to get out of it? One career doesn't fit everyone, and so you really have to find where you fit. Because I strongly believe that everybody has a place. You just got to find it. And it might be at the end of the rainbow. Thank you very much.